Welcome to Get Big Out Loud Radio, where we explore living the complex, funny, and beautiful ride of life with me, Kari Knutson, and Dr. Pat on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Are your thoughts keeping you small? Are you ready to get big? I will offer you ideas to transform what you are thinking into conscious action. Explore what is keeping you small and how to shift your behaviors in order to get big. Learn what is possible for you. Get ready to get big and live life out loud starting now.
Welcome to this fabulous show, Get Big Out Loud with Kari. I am so honored. I get to take this journey with her. And I have to tell you, every time I go to look at what we're talking about for the day, I'm like, hello, was she at my house this morning? And so today we're going to talk about things that guide us. Okay, funny story out of the gate. Funny story. Kari, welcome to your own show. Great we could be together.
Thank you, Dr. Pat.
So I'm getting ready to come into the office, into the studios today. And, you know, I've had to do a lot of work from home for a lot of reasons. I have a lot of paperwork at home that I cannot log in here. And it really feels odd because I really love being here with Emily, with Moxie, you know, Jessica, the whole team here. I did leave Linda home today because she's still doing stuff. But I woke up this morning and I'm getting dressed and I'm like, okay, can we go play ping pong later? And she says, yeah, we are. So I get all dressed, right? And I didn't come in a lot last week. So I get dressed and Linda looks at me. This is things that guide us, things that guide us. And so I'm having a funny time with my blouse. I'm like, doesn't feel right, right? I'm like, you know, and Linda's like, pull your blouse up. What do you? And she says, oh my God, you've got your blouse on backwards. That's why it doesn't fit right. And, you know, why am I sharing this silly story? Because just an inkling of something not right with the blouse. Now, I could have ignored it, but of course, my best friend is there. And I'm like, what's wrong with this? I just bought this. And she's looking at it and she's trying to pull it up. And then she says, oh my God, you have it on backwards. And so what was the thing that made me look at it? Because on a very busy day, I don't really do that. And this is just one small thing, but we all need directions. Sometimes it's about whether you have your shirt on frontwards or backwards. And other days it's, should I take that $200,000 loan from my business? Should I buy the house? What should I eat for dinner? Am I on track with today's topic or not?
All the things that, like, how do we make decisions, big and small? How do we pay attention to things, like from your shirt being on backwards, like something's not right, but you could easily just be like, I'm just going to go about my day. You know, we have feelings when things aren't right. Also, we have struggles when we need to make decisions. A lot of us, like, especially, I would say it doesn't really matter sometimes if it's small or big. Some people can't decide what they want for lunch, and some people can't decide who they want to marry. And so it's just hard to, I think the reason we want to talk today is like, what are things that actually guide us when we need to make decisions? Because there's a lot that goes into the decision-making process, and our brains sometimes work against us, either to ignore it because we're moving on to other things, or it's too trivial, or to get into analysis paralysis. There's too much going on to the decision, so we just don't make any decision. So I wanted to talk about what guides us and to think of some easy, simple ways to think about utilizing your brain power in ways that serve you when we need to make decisions instead of that stop you.
You know, can I go a little pop culturally on you for a minute with this?
I hope I know it. It's like a gamble.
Okay, you're going to know of it. Okay. I want to address this to the Olympic Gymnast Committee, whoever you people are, whoever you are. When you are unclear about something and you yank a bronze medal from somebody and give it to somebody else, and then you get unclear about the decision you make, and then you get more unclear, now you yank that bronze medal from somebody else. You yanked it and gave it to Jordan Childs, and oh my gosh, poor Italian. And then you yank it away from Jordan Childs, and what? You're like in limbo until you read the video. Are you the cheapest organization on the planet that you cannot give both of these women a bronze medal because you are so not doing what my friend and colleague Kari is going to school you on today?
Making decisions.
Honestly, if you're that unclear, and the reason I bring this up, how gut wrenching for these two gymnasts, right? How gut wrenching. Bronze medal, right? Questionable timing call, bronze medal. Then the poor Italian gymnast, they yanked it back from her. Then they give it to the other one. Then they give it to the USA. Oh, and then they say, oh, oopsie, we think we made a mistake in watching the video. So then they yank it from Jordan Child.
Oh
And
no.
I'm like, people, listen to the show. You could have stopped this and given them both the bronze medal. But this is just one thing. I want to get back to what you said, because what you're saying is so important.
Well, and I think what you're saying is that indecision sometimes, and I don't know exactly the situation you're talking about with that, but like the idea of like, we sometimes we waffle with making a decision. Sometimes it's difficult to make a decision. Sometimes it's hard for us to trust our decisions. Sometimes there's other factors involved with decision making. And that's why it can be hard to think, okay, what can actually guide me tangibly when I show up in this world to help me make some decisions? And so that's why I think it was important to explore, because how many decisions do you make in a day between the time you wake up and the time you go to bed? And how many of those seem like inconsequential? Some of them are huge, but they all make an impact. So again, like what can tangibly guide us as we do that? Something we can count
Yeah.
on, rely on, and a way to think about it. That's what I wanted to bring up today.
Let's talk about it, because I am not an expert in Olympic gymnastics. I'm not.
Neither am
I'm
I.
a personal, I am a personal observer that just doesn't quite get it.
That
And there
sounds
are
like
a
a
couple
horrible
of things like that.
situation. That
Well,
sounds really hard.
terrible, isn't it gut wrenching? When you be like, and I'm just, what if we were to do something different? Let's talk about what you're proposing here today, Kari.
So what I'm proposing is you think about so here's what I guess how I framed it. I was thinking about tangible things that guide us as a way to use as a metaphor for what
Yeah.
intuitively guides us. And so I was thinking about, okay, what guides me? And people tend to say like, oh, a compass is a guide. But I haven't used a compass in a long time. Or what's in your toolbox? I just have a screwdriver. That's my main tool, or a hammer. I don't have a like big toolbox that I go to. I'm not handy. And oh, nice.
A
You got your little
compass,
compass on there.
a little knife,
I love that. You have your little toolkit in that little thing
a
right there.
little
Whistle.
whistle, a little rope.
Oh my gosh, a little bit of everything. Maybe that's what you say, a little bit of everything. But see, that's a tangible item, right? That could help guide you in a situation. And I was thinking for me, what do I actually use in my life besides maps? Like that's an obvious thing. And what came up for me is, you know what? I use recipes as a guide. And I thought that was a really good idea to think of as analogy, essentially, like how a recipe, if you have to get ingredients, but you have to put them in the right order and you have to have the right thing. So you need a recipe, and so a lot of times when we need inspiration, when we need some how to, when we need some actual resources, like do it this way, it's great in our lives. Like if we think about, okay, that's easy for me to think of going to a recipe, but what do I go to when I'm like, need to make a decision, need to know what order, need some resources? How can I use my mind, essentially my resources, as my recipe? And then when I got to think about recipe, I thought of it, well, sometimes you got to look in your pantry and you can get all the stuff for the recipe, but you're like, okay, what do I have in my actual pantry, physically in my pantry? Some of us have like not a lot to go on and are really creative. And I know I have a friend of mine named Laura who she would make a gourmet dinner out of some string cheese and garbanzo beans. And I swear to God, I'd be like, it's the best thing I ever had. And other of us would look at the pantry and it's bare. Others of us have a whole full pantry, but have no idea what to make. And so this has made me think about this idea of our metaphorical pantry. What skill sets do we
Yeah,
have in there and how can we utilize them? And so I thought the best, again, analogy was like recipe,
I
like
love it.
how does that work? So that's my premise today, is thinking about how recipes are a guide for us and thinking about how pantries let us know we have available. And in our own lives, when we're trying to make decisions, what kind of recipe are we following when we need guidance and help? And what's in our pantry? You know, there's an ad that says, what's in your wallet? And so
Yeah.
I think I should change it to what's in your pantry.
Yeah. I love this metaphor because I think everybody can relate to it, even people that don't cook. I think this is something important. You know, I grew up in a family where we didn't have a lot we didn't have a lot of money, like basically no money. And it was always interesting what got conjured up to eat. It
Mm-hmm.
was fascinating when you think about it. But why was mama able to do that? Well, because she had a gazillion recipes somewhere stored in the back of her brain. Somewhere
Yeah,
back there,
she
recipes from
was
the old country.
resourceful. And she
Yeah,
was resourceful because some people see the same ingredients and say two different things. Like, oh, look what I can make. And other people like, I can make anything. And that's how we come to life sometimes in our situation with our own pantry. Like, I can't do anything with this, or like, what can I do versus what can't I do? And that's really great because that idea of like, sometimes we're pushed to have to be creative, and sometimes it's better how can I be before I'm in a crisis. How and then that's what I also want to get to today. How can we take stock of our skill sets, what we have that's special to us, the things we can lean into that will help us when we need to make decisions, especially on the fly when we don't have a long time and we need to like really think about that creativity quickly, or we need to lean into the best parts of who we are. So I like that example of your mom because like sometimes you got to be creative with what you got there.
yeah. But let's talk about this. Part of this is going through some of the questions we ask ourselves. And I know that y- y- we've had to make a lot of difficult decisions here in the past couple of years. I know that. And by asking what's in my pantry or what's in our pantry,
Mm-hmm.
aren't we asking ourselves, correct me if I'm wrong on this, what's in my creative juices to help me MacGyver this?
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Oh,
Is
I
that
love
an
that
old
MacGyver
school
because I
MacGyver, old school?
yeah, yeah, no, but I love MacGyver actually because I actually know that reference because for people who don't know, that's a show from the 80s where this guy MacGyver used science to solve problems, but he only had things like a thumbtack, a piece of string, a box, and two pencils. And then he had to like make a bomb to get out of something or like do something creative. He always was like, what do I have? And then so like, sometimes you're like, can you MacGyver this? Because that's a great reference to a show where someone had to be creative always. That's how he got out of life's problems. And so when I'm talking about the tools you have, what I'd like people to think about is, so what are actual things that you might be able to utilize that you have, either your personality, resources that you can tap into, your work ethic, your belief system, what kinds of things, and then what are like values that you have, or what is something that what is it, where are you in your creative space, like when you tap in that creativity, and especially things that are unique to you. And this is hard sometimes for some people to see it because we often don't know what's unique to us because we're just living our lives. But here's a quick example. When I think about things that are unique to me, one of the things that I draw in my toolkit is that, and that may not seem like, okay, how is this useful to you? But I know American Sign Language. And that, along with one of my skill sets of being like optimistic and tenacious, I would say I'm tenacious, optimistic, and I know sign language. So if I have these three things in my pantry, and let's say I show up to a situation where I'm teaching a class, and it's the things that are going south, or I need to find a way to engage people, or I need something unique and interesting, or whatever, I can always lean into my optimism. Like I could probably figure this out. And second of all, something unique to me is that I always bring sign language into things. People find it novel and interesting, or they're curious about deaf culture or something. So sometimes I have been able to save the day by adding and learning some sign language, or talking about something from a perspective of sign, or teaching someone a concept and then showing it in sign as a
Yeah.
way to create a memory trick. But see how that seems so unrelated? I can guarantee you, if you look at your pantry, you'll see things that are seemingly unrelated in your skill sets. But acknowledging them, so I don't have to think about what are my skill sets? What are the things unique to me? We want to do it ahead of time. So when we're in those moments, we can just draw upon it quickly. We can grab what we need and go.
Yeah. And, I'm so glad you brought this up. I want to talk about this for a minute. Um, oh, I get emotional about this.
Oh,
Hello. Just got a little emotional right there.
I can
You see,
handle it.
there's one thing for me, people look at me as really a badass in a lot of ways. they look at me and they say, man, she's a little rough around the, whatever that is. But then there are people that know me, and, growing up, being learning different and being challenged. I don't really talk about sort of my diagnosis and stuff because I don't find a need to do it. But part of that has made me acutely aware of others. And the most transformative thing I've ever done in my life is around what you just said. And I need to go back to it because this is really a reminder of how MacGyverisms we can be. I thought I was being of service working in the addiction and recovery community until I realized what we're not doing for people in different aspects of that, especially in our deaf community, in the deaf culture. And I have to tell you, I had to dig from a deep MacGyver kit. And honestly, I've never been made more fun of, make fun of. Because my hands, right, my fingers and my hands were, I had an illness, a really bad illness when I was younger, and a lot of my joints in my hands were deformed. You should see me sign.
Oh, oh my gosh. So the main thing
You should see me sign.
to use.
Right, right. So why am I bringing it up? Because here I am trying to help a community that nobody is listening to. And hello, you people out there in the, just don't even get me started on this. But this is a community of people that are in recovery, and the resources that are available to them are few and far between. And so I don't know how I volunteered to work with this group. They thought I knew sign language. And so I could have backed out of that. Let's talk about decisions like this.
Yeah,
We
like
are
when you want to back out or when you
when
don't.
yeah, because part of what I read in the show outline today is we are being called forward. Every one of us is being called forward. We may not think it, but we're being called forward. Why on some days are we able to move forward to that calling and other days we're not? And I think the crux of the matter is what you're teaching today.
Oh yeah, and that's so good you bring up like why not? Like why can't we move forward? Especially because I do think especially in today's day and age, it feels even more imperative that people show up with their gifts and talents and contributions. But what I find in my work with people, and my background is as a therapist, is that people tend to set up a couple different things in their minds about like why things won't work and like why they can't instead of why they can. And one of the biggest things I find in people is around perfectionism. Like unless it's perfect, I'm not even going to try at all. Or unless I can guarantee the outcome, it's not worth the effort because what if I fail? And it's so weird that we always say, what if I fail instead of what if I succeed? We never say, what if I succeed? It's like, what if I fail? And then if I fail, if you look at your past, you failed in so many ways. And has it been horrible or has it been okay? Like sometimes you think I fail and it's a big flop, but I think we fail in degrees. And one of the problems that most people, and I think this is a human condition, our brains operate in what I call dualistic thinking patterns, which means I'm either great or I'm awful. It's good or it's bad. I succeeded or I failed. They liked it or they didn't. And then when we live at these extreme ends, we who's going to try? So in those moments, you have to train your brain to get out of dualistic thinking because I find that two things can be true at once. Like I can have tried my best and it was like I did pretty good and there's still room to grow. Or I could make a decision and feel like that was good at the moment. And then I might have to make some tweaks and choose some other things too. I can also say something, I'm excited about something and I'm still super nervous. Right? You can hold two things. We're incredibly complex as human beings, but we act like very dualistic. And so one of the first things is to think in your brain when you start to like if you feel called to do something or when you feel like you need to make a decision, notice what your brain does to keep you in a holding pattern. And dualistic thinking is huge. Having to be perfect is another. And I like to say perfect is the enemy of good. Sometimes it's good enough. If I
Yeah.
would have waited to be perfect to do this podcast, I remember the first podcast, Dr. Pat, and I didn't even know where anything was or how to, or what it even meant. And I remember when I was filming my promo, the first time I filmed it, I was like, hello, this is Kari Knutson. And the person helping me was like, I think you should just like talk like normal. Like, don't try to talk like you're doing this advertiser or something. And it made me giggle because then the first time I was like, hello, Dr. Pat, and welcome to my show. And I just remember thinking like I was trying to be a podcast host without like really knowing. And I thought, thank God I didn't just quit after that first time because it was so awkward. And then one episode I had I was asking for people to call in and nobody called in. And I remember thinking like, no one's calling in. Is this any good? And then I was like,
Oh,
people are listening to this at all random times. They're not, that's not a reflection, but I wasted so much time thinking of the call in that I wasn't even present with the show. So it just makes me giggle a little bit to think sometimes you have to start to get better. And if I would have definitely should have quit the first one because that wasn't perfect, probably the second, third, fourth, fifth. And even today is not perfect, but can it still be really, really good? And so the idea of what is good enough for us to keep us going and to make changes. So just those are two of the things. I have a few more things, but I wanted to just, I
yeah.
guess, take a break after those two things to say, notice what your brain does when you try to make a decision or make a change, and notice how it kind of pulls you back into that, essentially safe space. But I don't think that safe space is a space for progress if you really want to make progress.
Yeah. And I think you referred to it as I wish I had versus what I have. Because you see, what you had was you. You're a premier speaker. So what you have is your ability to do that. For me, in the situation with my, great sponsees that I had, what did I have? Well, I had the ability that I could present things on a flip chart. I had the ability that I could get my friend who knows sign language to come in and translate. And this is when we were doing things in person,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
I had an ability that I could learn some things, right? There's some things that I could do with my hands and my fingers so that it doesn't look like I'm saying one word when I'm not, or doing one letter that I didn't mean to do. And
Sure.
so that's what what I have. What do we have? Ask yourself the question, to follow what Kari was saying.
Oh, and
w-
go ahead, ask, like, say what you're going to
What do
say.
you have? Look at what you have, right? Because when we look at what we have, it's immense,
Oh,
isn't it?
yes. But again, the brain, it tends to, we see something, see what I don't have versus what I do have. And that is such a, like a great way to tap into how your brain works. And when you see kind of your resources and options, usually we see what we don't have. Or when we see what we've accomplished, usually we see what's left to be done. Yeah, I did this, but I still have more to do. Or if someone gives us a compliment and says you did great on that. Yeah, but did you see this? I didn't get that done. We tend to do that. And so it's again a great thing to notice. What do I actually have that I can utilize? And then can I tap into to recognize if I might be playing a comparison game to what I wish I had. So I might come to a situation and know my skill set, but I might have the drawback of utilizing what I have versus what I wish I have. I could do this better if I had this. If only this would happen, then I'd be successful. If this certain thing came to play, then that's the missing link. And some of us wait our whole lives for those things that we just don't have in our pantry. And we have to still say, can I be creative and not sit on the sidelines waiting magically for those things to arrive, or to be jealous and play the comparison game. I can't be like that because look at you, Dr. Pat. I can never be this because of this. And when we do this comparison game, we always lose. I've never
Yeah.
seen anyone compare up. Yeah, I'm doing better than you. I just don't see that. I see the comparison game as like I'm looking out in the world and then I'm making myself lose somehow because I'm not enough for whatever reason. And so that's important. Again, when you notice your brain doing that, I think our brains do all sorts of things on autopilot. And where conscious thinking comes in is to say, oh, I'm noticing that I'm playing that comparison game. And then I'm saying to myself, comparison, the beautiful quote that I always use, comparison is a thief of joy, is a great quote, but I just say comparison is a thief. And so then I notice when I'm comparing, what is this robbing me of? my own experience, my own learning, my ability to tap into my creativity, who I am versus who I think I should be or who someone else is. So that's a great thing to ask yourself. Is like, can I recognize what this is robbing me of when I'm in the comparison game? And can I be proud of someone's success and happy for them? And can I also take up my own space and be proud of what I'm doing in my own way? So that's another thing the brain offers up: comparison, and it makes us wait, and it makes us wish our pantry had different things, and then we sit around and we don't get to the store or don't do it, and we just look at our bare pantry and be like, oh, I don't have it, versus like, what do you have, what can you do? And you're not supposed to have a pantry like everyone else's.
Yeah, I love what you said about comparison. I want to talk about this when we come back from break, because there's an aspect of comparison that hooks itself on perfectionism,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I want to talk with you about that, because anxiety, focusing on mistakes, self-judgment, and
Mm-hmm.
even judgment of others, this idea of control. Let's talk about this. And how does it get in the way of tapping into our MacGyver factor, right?
Oh, I love that. Tap into your MacGyver factor. I wonder
Right.
if we need to copyright that. I love it.
I don't know. But you ever watch that show, and there are moments when you could see the process of what am I going to do? You don't hear complaining. Cool as a cucumber, MacGyver, right? I think there were a couple episodes where he's a little rattled, but just cool, right?
Right.
See him like looking around, right? But we see that a lot. We saw it in these past Olympics from people from all over the world, from different countries. We just saw some level of calmness in the moment where most of us would have just lost it. Were they comparing? When
Mm.
that amazing cyclist from the United States decided, I'm just going to put the pedal to the metal, I'm not looking at my people around me, and I'm just going to go for it, what was she thinking? How calm did she look? How often, when other people observe people in the media, how often do you hear them say they look so relaxed, they look so at peace, they look so natural? What the heck is that got to do with it? Everything. It's a MacGyverism. Let's take a short break, everybody. Kari's going to walk us through this. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. What a great show. This is so important. For those of you just tuning in, you're listening to Get Big Out Loud with Kari Knutson. This is Living the Complex, Funny, and Beautiful Ride of Life. I'm Dr. Pat, and I get to take this beautiful journey with her each show, each episode, and each episode really taps in to where are you today? Can you allow things to guide you? What are some of the things that do guide us? Kari, before we keep rolling here, can you please tell people, not only are you a phenomenal speaker, you're a coach in that way, you're also a life coach. You help people, you have a background of counseling. There's so much you do. How do people find out more about you? How do they find out what your schedule is? All of the above.
Yeah, you can go to knutsonspeaks.com. It's KNUTSON speaks.com. And really, my work is all around based on applied psychology and how it can make our lives better. So whether that's speaking, training, coaching, connecting with people in any level, it's all about how using psychology can help through topics like emotional intelligence, resolving conflict, applying leadership to real life situations. And I feel like one of the most exciting things I do is what I say is, a lot of times we think about psychology and sitting on a couch and talking about our moms and having someone write about us. And I'm like, let's take psychology off the couch and bring it into our lives to make our lives better. And so that's everything that I do. And if you want to reach out to me through knutsonspeaks.com for any questions or inquiries, I'd love to hear from you.
I was talking to you a minute about Arno Penzias, and of course we were talking about Einstein, and we're also talking about Carl Jung, and talking about the relaxation factor that these people put in their lives, but also the MacGyver factor. And I was sharing with you that when we take the metaphor of the recipe, each of these people looked in their pantry. Each of these people had a point by which they knew they were onto something, but they were, my words, a little stuck. In Arno Penzias' case, who really co-discovered the Big Bang Theory, there was an article, a research article he came across, and he reached out across the nations to really collaborate on that, to get more information. Jung sculpted, clearly Carl Jung and Freud, they went at it for what, like decades? And then you have Einstein, who is very clear about you can't solve the problem at the level it's created. But that is the MacGyver factor. MacGyver is not solving the problem at the level it was created. He's going into the pantry. Talk for a minute about one of the most important things that I think happen. How do we step into the zone where we're anxiety-free, judgment-free, control-free? Because comparison that you talked about, that leads to perfectionism, but a toxic version of it. Talk about some of these things, but also I want you to talk about optimism.
Definitely. Well, so I'll start with the idea of sometimes when the first thing that you said I want to touch on is that sometimes when we were looking at our own pantry, so to speak, we can't see what we can't see. And we need other people for support, for guidance, to observe things about us. Sometimes we're not supposed to solve everything by ourselves. And that like rugged individualism and independent, like it's that independent streak doesn't always serve us. So the goal is not like I have to do everything always by myself and figure it out. Sometimes we need to lean into other people and say, help me develop this skill. I want this new thing for my pantry. Help me develop it. Or help me see what I can't see. Or even like advice and support from people or other perspectives is so valuable. And I think a lot of times when I wanted to just tell a quick story about how somebody added something essentially to my pantry, a point of view that I didn't have. And this was me kind of getting stuck in just what I know and how I think and in my dualistic thinking. And this was around after graduate school in North Carolina. I'd called my dad and I said, Dad, I don't know what to do. Freaking out of this decision to make. Should I stay in North Carolina? Should I move to Connecticut? Should I go to Boston? Should I come home? I don't know what to do. And I was like kind of giving up. And he's like, well, and he asked me point blank, if you had to decide today, what would you do? And I said, I would move to Boston. And he said, well, why don't you do that? I'm like, because I don't know anybody. I don't have a job yet. And I had my whole story, right? And then notice how my brain again is like really limiting me from even making a decision. And then he says, well, honey, if it doesn't work out, we can always just come pick you up. And that statement right there to me translate into, oh my gosh, wait a minute, I can make a decision. And then if it doesn't work out, make another decision, but I could get out of analysis paralysis. I could do something and then choose again. So right in that moment, you know what came into my pantry? A big bottle of You Can Choose Again. A big bottle that doesn't have to be perfect to be really, really good. A good bottle is like, make the best decision with what you have. And like a little cracker box of perfect is the enemy of good. Sometimes it's good enough. So now, because my dad said that, I was from somebody else essentially giving me that, I got to put that in my pantry and I lean into that all the time now. You can choose again is a huge thing in my pantry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
sometimes we need other people's advice, opinions, ideas, and then you put that in your pantry and then you lean into that when you need it.
I talked about Arno Penzias and, people, you can Google who he was. I happened to work at Bell Labs when he became president of Bell Labs and got to know him then. But even then, he went over and over and over again with the calculations, and he was hired for satellite research. Bell Labs, of course, was the premier basic research organization. I mean, oh my gosh, it was known for that. So I got to be exposed to the people in Area 11, Building 15. Seriously, they gave me top secret clearance. Who would do that, right? And and but I'm not saying he got stuck. I don't want to say that. That would be not fair. But they couldn't figure out the difference in a signal check. They kept trying it over and over, the signal check of the satellite. What was in his pantry? Other colleagues. other
Mhm.
colleagues. And so Robert Dickey, Princeton University, right, gave a possible answer. See, this is the thing that I want you to talk about now, because there's an energy of optimism that allows you to transcend competition and move to collaboration. There's this idea of optimism and an energy of optimism that says everything is possible. It
Mhm.
doesn't say everything is possible, but I have to do it all. You see, possibilities involve the entire energy of the universe. Can you talk for a minute on how we tend to get stuck because we push so hard, think we have to do it alone, when all you
Mhm.
got to do is call Princeton University and get some help from a couple of physicists?
Yes. Well, I think that idea of like what keeps us stuck is really important, because sometimes why don't we reach out? Why don't we get help? Because we're stuck in perfectionism. I have to be perfect. And if I admit I don't know, what would happen? And then that's judgment, right? So the heavy lead foot of judgment comes in, and then we decide, oh, I won't ask because, and then we make up a story about it. And truly, truly, I think this is so interesting. If someone were to ask any one of us for help, most people's response is, of course, we'd love to share expertise or help, right? But then how many times do we sit in the small box of perfectionism, wishing we could get out, but we're like, oh, I can't ask for help because I'll be judged, or I can't say I don't know because people will think that I'm not smart enough, or whatever it is. We sit in that small box of perfectionism, and then we don't connect with other people. We don't ask for help. We don't learn from them. And then we put that stuff in our pantry because I think a lot of us think, okay, I'm supposed to like have it all figured out. And a lot of us too don't even realize how much we're playing in that perfectionism, because it's tied in a lot with control. And most of us want to try to control as much as we can, understandably, right? But in reality, there's very little we can actually control.
Yeah.
There's very few things, but we act like we can. So we waste a lot of energy on that control. And what it's interesting to see the concurrent idea of perfectionism and control together, and how that keeps us from a lot of things: asking for help, looking for resources, saying we don't know, trying new things, failing. And when I say failing, I am quotes, because sometimes what we fail at, we're like, we did good enough, but then we call it a failure. So we don't try again. And this is, I always think about this for myself. You have to start to get better. So like my first presentation I ever did, if I look at that now, I cringe. Like everything was, that wasn't, I was like, oh, I would never do that again. But you know what? Thank goodness I did the first one so I could practice and do a second one. And then from there, I could change some things and do a third one. And I could learn more things and do a fourth one. And now, hundreds of presentations later, hundreds, I'm still working at it. But the goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to be good and really good and engaging. And I think sometimes if we like strive for perfectionism, we either don't do it at all, or if we do it and don't think we succeed, then we quit.
We do.
And
I mean,
that idea keeps us stuck.
yeah, let's take something very practical, because I had a situation last week that I never thought in a million years. And it was, we're a growing business. We move, we're working with investors. And so we check our bank accounts all the time. We have to. We have alerts, a gazillion alerts. We get transfers in, new clients. So it's something we're very mindful of, and particularly me. And I call my bank, he who shall not be named on air. And I called them and I said, please take a look at this account. This is what's going to happen. Is this going to work? She says, oh yeah, don't worry about those little things that are going on there. I said, okay, you sure I'm okay, because I can do something different. Oh no, you're going to be good. So I hang up. No, it was not good. I wake up the next day and OMG on the account. And I'm in the moment, and you have to have a MacGyver moment here.
Yes. And I
You
love it.
have to have a MacGyver moment.
And for
You,
people who don't know the show, you could just the idea,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the premise is this guy is dealing with impossible odds and he has limited resources. And every episode, he has to do something to move forward or change the situation or solve the problem. And I love that you're using this MacGyver moment, because sometimes we wake up, like you said, I had it all planned out. It was all supposed to be great. And then, oh, it's not. And then you can't be like, just put your finger, what's the bank's fault, and cry foul. But I mean, that is what happened. And yet, what are you going to do about it? Like, you have to show up in life with your creativity, with your determination, with whatever it is in you, your work ethic, your values. And those are the things I'd say in your pantry you can lean into when things are not going well. But sometimes we forget we have those, or we sit in this situation of like how unfair it is or how awful it is. And those things, so again, two things can be true. Is what happened to you at the bank awful? Absolutely. Should you stomp your feet and cry and raise your fist in the air? 100%. And do you still have to figure it out? Absolutely. Two things can be true at once.
Yeah, but let's take about what happens when you do what you said earlier. You referenced this earlier about the energy of optimism, because it's so, when you're a company like mine, you can't have anything go wrong with anything if you're an expansive growing company. And I teach people this business development. So this is kind of weird. This is a story that I share, that I'm going to be sharing in my upcoming classes. So you're in the moment, and let me tell you, I'm not done with this yet, but what do I do in that moment with my bank? I ask for a supervisor. Thing number one, you clear your head, because you're not going to get anywhere with the person you're talking to. And I ask for a manager, and I get the manager, and what's your name? Blah, 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 Miguel. And I said, Miguel, I got to tell you, I need to file a formal complaint with the bank. And he looked at me like, well, it's really clear that you messed up, kind of, he's saying. I said, no, I want you to go back to the recording 2 hours earlier today, and the recording yesterday when I called in. Oh, I see you called in. Yes, please go back and listen to the recording. And by the way, I would like to request a copy of the recording. Well, good luck with that. And this is one of the major top banks. And I had the wherewithal to say, if you're not going to fix this, file a formal complaint. Now, here's what you think about. What is that going to do for me? It's not going to do anything to change this, but it goes on record. And it goes on record as a formal complaint against the bank that the bank is filing against themselves. But if you're this, and you're not in that moment where you can think clear, none of that happens. Now,
Well,
how is that going to help me? Well, it's going to help me because I now have something to say, we didn't really screw up. Even though it looks like we did, we really didn't. This is the formal complaint. But you have to think, you're in a grocery store, and you've got it, you're so overwhelmed. You can't even remember the reason you went for the grocery store.
yeah.
You went to the grocery store because you were out of formula for your infant child. That's why you went. But you can't remember why you went. One, stay optimistic. Two, stay frosty. What that means is you got to refresh yourself every once in a while and stop and take a deep breath, even if it's in the potato chip aisle. You know what I'm saying here?
Well, and I like that you're saying, like, what happens when we get stressed? What happens when we get overwhelmed, or we feel like we're accused or something, or like things aren't going well? Our brains, again, tend to shut off, and we go into survival mode, we go into response mode, and that makes it hard to lean into your values and your skill sets and all the things in your pantry that would actually help you. Then what you're talking about too is saying, like, how can I reset myself so I can see clearly what my resources are? And this is why I think when you're not in crisis is the best way to analyze your metaphorical pantry, so that you know what skills you have tangibly before you need them. So you can go and say, I know what's there. I know how to center myself. I know what to do. I know I have resources. Because in the crisis moment, it's very hard to say that to yourself, right? Because you're mad and you're angry and emotions are high. And so that idea of, like, if you know before you need it, and I think some people might say, well, that's really sounds, I don't know, cocky to me, or ego driven to say, like, what's in your pantry and like that, you know it. I feel like it's a source of confidence. And I feel like I can be more confident and optimistic if I know what I have and if I believe that what I have. And this is sometimes what happens with people. If I ask them what their skill sets are, they'll say that they're nice. And everyone is, but they're like, don't get to the root of like what they have that might make them different from someone else, or really express it in a great way. And that's like me, if I looked at a bunch of flowers in a bouquet and be like, well, you're all nice. Everyone's just nice. Instead of saying, oh, look at your purple. Look at the way those yellow things come out of your, look at your cool leaves. Look at the way that orange makes this whole thing shine. Like when I love flowers. I love, like, if anyone ever wants to give me anything, flowers are the way to go. Right. But I'm saying when I look at a bouquet, I'm not judging one flower is better than another, but I need all of them to make up the bouquet.
Yeah.
And so when we see ourselves, sometimes we just say, well, I'm just a daisy. And like, instead of saying, what does a daisy bring to the bouquet? Like, and don't just
Oh,
say you're nice. You're more than nice. Like, find some descriptor words and don't think of it as cocky or ego driven. Think of it as confident, and think of it as a way to also, I'm more optimistic if I know what skills I bring to something. And we need that. So that's my
love
plug
this.
for checking your pantry before you're in an emergency.
Yeah, check in your pantry. What I love about this, I listen to the same motivational speaker almost every day, a lot. And I don't always agree with this speaker's philosophy. I don't. I mean, there are some things that you're not going to talk to me about, but I do believe in that optimistic message. He does one talk called Call It In. It's my new thing. Call it in. You have to call it in. When you are in the middle of stuff, call it in. I'm calling it a great memory so that I recognize why I'm ending up in this grocery store. I'm calling in the perfect solution for this bank situation, which nullifies everything and makes everybody. I'm calling in the money you need for that grocery. I'm calling in the job that you want. I'm calling in the things that you haven't even thought. I'm calling in optimism because these two are talking about optimism, and I just feel like slapping them both right now. Right. But I'm going to call that into my life. I'm
Yeah.
calling in that next love relate. See, we can do these things. Somebody said to me not too long ago, Pat, you fake it till you make it. I said, I don't, what does that mean? Fake it till you make it. Well, you got, look, if it comes out of my mouth, I ain't faking it. If they're the words are coming out of my mouth, I am not saying them or on. I said, I don't get the fake it till you make it thing, because the minute that you're able to show up and call something in that you want, I remember long time ago, one of my first motivational, what do you call them, workshops you went to with like people, crazy speakers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember them standing me up and saying, you have to live your purpose. What's your purpose?
Mm-hmm.
And I was not in a good place.
Oh.
And I said, my purpose is to get through this long webinar without falling asleep. That's my purpose. And I said it to a friend of mine who is now a friend of mine. I'm not going to mention his name. I said, that's my purpose. My purpose is to get through you up there talking for 6 hours with a bunch of us and then trying to sell us something at the end that we actually don't need. I need to get through this today without falling asleep.
Well, and would you use that as like, sometimes we got to get through things. Sometimes we got hard things to choose. Sometimes we need to figure that out. And like, where does your optimism lie? Where does your skill set
Where
lie?
does it lie?
And then where can you be? I'd also like to touch upon this, being in the present. So you can say that rather than like, people say like, sometimes we get lost in our dreams or hopes for the future. And we say, well, what am I at right now? Like, I can still be striving for things in the future, but sometimes we either live in the past so much that we like drag that around about why we can't do stuff and what happened to us. And then, or we live in the future about what might happen and what could happen and what we wish were in our pantry or what we wish would happen. And then sometimes we don't stay in that present moment. Like right now, I want to get through what, like you said, the seminar. Right now, I need to solve the problem with the bank. Right now, I need to figure out resources to make sure my kids are ready to get to school. And like, I'm okay. Right now, I need to, sometimes like, now I need to mow the lawn. Like sometimes we need to get in spaces where we're like, what is the present moment called for, instead of everything that got messed up in the past or everything that could happen in the future? And sometimes that present moment power, the power of the present moment is really powerful, to ask yourself, what do I need right now? And that
Exactly.
could be in your pantry in terms of like, focus on the present moment, and that kind of leaning into the skill set of how can I focus on what I need to do now?
And you know what happened with that? This was my friend that was doing the workshop, Mr. Les Brown. I will mention his name because we are very good friends today. And he said, I can't remember what he said, but he said, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Everybody should be like this. Where are you in the moment? Are you bored? Are you going to sleep? Are you willing to stand up and tell me that? Because you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change this up. And sometimes in that right before the MacGyver moment, you have to stop.
Mm-hmm.
One, you have to remember, I believe in unlimited possibilities. Two, you have to remember, I do have a pantry, my entire life's experiences. And three, you have to stay optimistic. Kari, thank you for today. What a great topic. I mean, I always end up rethinking stuff. Like now I'm rethinking what I'm going to do with the bank thing. Thank you. What's your personal message? What do you want to leave us with? And again, tell us how we can find out more about you. You rock, sister.
Thank you. You can find out about me at knutsonspeaks.com, and my information is up there on speaking and presentation and coaching and my one-woman show, which, by the way, is happening August 29th in Fort Collins, Colorado. It's a Thursday night. It's at a place called the Lincoln Center. So any of you Colorado people who want to come, it's Ain't Never Met a Stranger. It's a comedy and storytelling show. And you can get that information on my website. And so I'm excited to put that out in the world as another thing in my pantry around my creativity and my interest in spreading joy and fun, and also stories about connection in another way. So that I'm really excited that's coming up. So please look for information on my website. It's called Ain't Never Met a Stranger. And my closing message is this idea that if you can think about yourself and your resources, and like, you're always going to have a MacGyver moment. You're always going to need to have that in your life. And people who show up with more confidence look at their pantry and not only know, like, I bet I can make something out of there. They're not wishing for a different pantry. They're like, this is what I got. And then they're reaching out to resources. They're figuring out ideas. They're using their creativity. They're not giving up. And they're not also lamenting what they have versus which they had. And they're in the present moment. And I think leaning into what you know is true for you with confidence, with focus, and with appreciation allows that to grow rather than from lack and what we don't have, or whether we're competing against other people or judging ourselves or comparing ourselves. Stay in that space where you can look and see what you do have and lean into that when you need to make decisions, and think about it as like, what's my recipe for success going to be? Well, I got less in my pantry. How am I going to use it?
I love it. Thank you so much for this. In the everyday world we live in, some days we're talking about how do we get in the grocery store and do remember that I came here for formula. Some days it's that. Other days it's taking on the largest bank in the United States and saying, you need to fix it, please. And other days it's letting go of it all. Yes. Thank you, Kari Knutson, for everything, and stay optimistic.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
You have been listening to Get Big Out Loud Radio, where we explore the complex, funny, and beautiful ride of life with me, Kari Knutson, joining Dr. Pat live every second Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com. I will help you to know which thoughts are keeping you small in order for you to get big. Get big and live your life out loud. For more information, visit KnutsonSpeaks.com.